everyone, and welcome to PopCultX, or welcome back to PopCultX if you're a return visitor. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming back. My name is Danny, one of the co-hosts here, along with Gabe, and we're happy to have you here for episode 153. Now, as you can see, there's more of us here this time, which is great because we get more perspectives, more insights, and I think a great way to begin this episode is for you all to learn who's actually here with us today. So let's go ahead and I will say their names, and I would like you guys, if you can, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe the what's it called, the elevator pitch of who you are, and then a question I have for you guys. And also out there, if you guys are watching this, I want you guys to think about this too. What does pop culture mean to you? So Jack Foster is joining us. Please, return visitor. Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself and what does pop culture mean to you?
Return visitor and fan favorite. If you recall from the last episode, I am the writer and artist on the comic book Gun. Earlier, when introducing me to the rest of the crew, Danny called me the writer, which I love. I think when you're an artist, when you do both, they always single out the art part. And I'm always like, but do you like the story? So when someone calls you a writer, you're like, nailed it. Writer and artist on the comic book Gun. And I am a terrible email skimmer. So, so the question was new to me. So I'm just extemporaneously off the top of my head. Here's what I think about pop culture. I think we're all close to the same age cohort. So we're a sort of generation very much defined by pop culture. Like it is like our substitute parent, our solace, the place we go to feel good, to feel anything. But at the same time, I think especially nerds, we have a kind of it's the popular part of pop culture that is tricky because on the one hand, there's the big overculture, which was full of stuff that I didn't like. There were these narrow little niches of the things that I deeply, deeply loved. And over the course of my years, it switched. And all the really weird, dirty things that I loved that I, thought me and 6 other people on the planet now are all over the place and everybody loves and you can say okay, it's comic books. Okay, it's D&D. But Kate Bush had the song of the summer last year. I was oh my God, truly all of my secret little idiosyncratic loves have finally dominated the universe.
Excellent. That is very true. She did have the song of the summer last year.
She sure the fuck did.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to come up, I think, later on in our discussion. But let's go ahead and move right ahead. Gabe, you're not a new visitor here. You've been here with me the whole time. But give us a recap of what pop culture means to you.
Well, pop culture is really important to me. It's something that I'm kind of obsessed with. I love watching television. I love watching films, love listening to music, reading comic books. It I dedicate so much of my time to those things that I am a big fan of pop culture. So without it, I think that I'd be a little bit crazier than what I already am, because it definitely keeps me entertained, keeps me happy and sane. So yeah, that's my my little ode to pop culture.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm right there along with you. It keeps me sane. I think pop culture to me is one of those things where it's just the connecting tissue between all of us. We all have that shared love. You go into a gym or something and people have all these different viewpoints and thoughts, but they're all working out together. And that it's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of vibe. Pop culture has that for all of us. I mean, there's 3 people on here, 4 people on here we're still getting to know each other more, and we're connected by this popular culture. So that being said, let's go ahead and welcome a new face and voice here to PopCultX, and that's Adrian Quintero. So Adrian, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is our first time meeting you, so we're excited for that, and also what pop culture means to you.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure being here, by the way. Let's see, I'm a graphic designer, illustrator for my day job. And at night, I throw on a cape and cowl and I become a little more of a streamer. I do stuff on Whatnot. I draw artist trading cards, and
cool.
then I do some blanks on Fridays and stuff on Whatnot. So I've been doing a little bit of that. I am an avid reader, collector, and I feel like all this stuff is all pop culture to me, and it definitely keeps me in tune with my youth stuff that I feel like my parents, maybe all of our parents, kind of threw out when they became an adult. My dad used to tell me all the stuff that he had. Wow, son, I really wish I had all my baseball cards. He grew up in the 50s and 60s. And he would always tell me what he had: Superman comics, Babe Ruth, baseball cards, stuff like that. And when they became adults, they tend to forgot about a lot of that stuff. So it helps me keep in tune with my youth and with today's youth as well. So if I'm following something that's today, it helps me understand, because I don't think my parents really understood our youth. They're like, oh, a bunch of crazy kids with crazy ideas and long hair and baggy jeans, or whatever it was, So I feel like that's the main thing on why I keep pop culture so close to me.
That's cool. Yeah, it does connect generations in a way.
It does. It's a good icebreaker too, a good conversation starter. If I saw any one of y'all at the bus stop or at the bar or something, just bringing up something. If I saw one of your tattoos or the shirt you were wearing, it would be easy for me to come up with a good conversation.
Very cool. Very cool. Welcome to PopCultX. We're excited to have you here. Also, I don't know I think you've been on the show once, Rob. When we talked about light.
Yeah, it might have been a long time ago. It's good to see you, Danny.
Yeah. So let's welcome Rob Alicea to the show, film writer, director. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts and feedback on today's topic, but also, what does pop culture mean to you?
Yeah, when you got that, when we got that question sent, it was actually like the first time I think in my life I actually ever tried to define it for myself. So I was like, all right, well, if a kid asked me, it's like, hey, I heard this term pop culture today. What is that? I feel like pop culture is something, whether it's from television or film or, written media, something that just transcended. I don't know really how to say it, where, it just hit just such a mass of people and became so meaningful. When I think back on pop culture, I think about growing up on Star Trek, right? Like I remember watching Next Generation, one of the first shows I remember watching, and then when I found out this term called Trekkies, I was like, well, what is that? And it was like this whole other world of people that not only love it, they dress up in costume. I mean, they're friends. They meet each other at different conventions. And I remember also as a kid being into the Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, right? I was around that age. And those, to me, that's what I think of when I think of pop culture. And then, on the film side, I guess if something comes to me immediately, I think of, probably a lot of these bigger franchises, Star Wars, right, things in Marvel, but I also think about Back to the Future. Back to the Future is probably one of my favorite films of all time. And I just remember when I got to a certain age and I really understood oh, this is a movie, right? And these are actors. And then as I've watched other movies and other television shows, seeing how that film has been homaged in films and comic books and just everything, it was like, wow, that's something that, like I said from the beginning, has transcended and has become so meaningful to other creators and just to people that we just continue to want to celebrate it. So I look at it as something that we all get to celebrate together. Like we said, there's the popular side of pop culture, which sometimes feels like everyone likes. And there's these niche little things where I still feel like you can find your niche group even in bigger pop culture, which I think is always awesome, right? When you find your own little group within the bigger group. So yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to having this discussion today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rob. And finally, Jen, you're a repeat visitor here. We're glad you keep coming back. But we never asked you this, or maybe we did in our previous discussions. What does pop culture mean to you?
Yeah, everybody, thanks for having me back again. As I stated before, these two they keep inviting me. Glutton for punishment, awesome. Just glad to be with you all in community. Again, my name is Gen X Joseph Colon. For my family members and friends, as you all are here, and yeah, I'm a comic book collector. I also am a personality. I do podcasting. I'm a YouTuber. So I do all things comics and pop culture as well. And I host virtual Comic Cons. So I do those twice a year. They're pretty damn cool. I like to say that I'm doing something that's different than other folks, which is also something that hopefully I can claim. Pop culture is very interesting. You know, I was thinking of Jack when you were just talking about the nostalgia about it, and then Rob, I would even think about like the tiered pieces of what pop culture looks like, right? Even growing up, thinking about this question, I said, was I really cool and part of pop culture? And, comic book collecting comic books and even dressing up in Comic-Con gear probably wasn't part of pop culture, but there was a niche sect that was, and we get to see that as grown ass men in tights or in some type of form of 3D printing. So I think that pop culture is relative. I think that even though it's supposed to be a unifier of a majority of folks, I also think that it provides an opportunity for people to have an inclusive space to be able to jump in. When Rob was talking about Back to the Future, I was like, yes, or even a unifier, as Adrian just talked about, between generations. Sometimes there might be a song that pops up and your youngin might say, oh, that's new. And you're like, no, that's actually not new. This actually comes from here. So to be able to connect, generations, if you look at all the generations from boomers all the way up to the new generation, Generation Z plus, we're not that far apart from each other, but there seems to be an interesting divide in what pop culture looks like, whether it's movies, music, and entertainment. So that's how I view pop culture. It's really a nostalgic piece to your childhood and now our current adulthood, which I don't know if anybody is embarrassed by it, but I sure am not. So I geek out every day. So it's good to be here.
It's funny you say embarrassed by it. I think if you would have asked me that when I was younger, I might have been embarrassed by my like for different Star Wars or different things like that. But now it's just I embrace it, I enjoy it, I love it, and it's curious. Yeah, as I grew older, that changed and shaped now shapes me. Very cool. Very cool. Well, why we're all gathered here today is a pretty contestable question, I think, and it really has proponents, pros and cons for each side of it. And of course, I'm talking about the great drop debate. And what do I mean by that? I mean, how do streaming platforms, release their new material? And do they release it all at once, the whole season, so people can binge it or watch it on their own schedule? Or do they release it weekly, episodically? Now, I know I have a preference, and I'm sure, as do all of you, have a preference to which you prefer, which method you prefer. So I guess just real quick, before we dive deeper into the why, just tell me, go around and we'll start off the same order. We'll go Jack first. Which one do you prefer, just weekly or all at once?
Oh, definitely on the drop, like weekly. And also, yes, weekly.
Weekly, okay. How about you, Gabe? Weekly or all at once?
So I'm a greedy bastard. I want all of it all at once. I want to devour everything all at once. It reminds me of like if you were to order a pizza, I'm not going to eat like one slice and then be like, I'm going to save the rest for later. I'm going to eat the whole pizza. That's just me being a greedy bastard. That's how I am with my media too.
Okay, Adrian, how about you? Weekly or all at once?
I think personally, all at once is fine with me, but I am kind of split when we're watching with our kids. We're watching something with our kids. The drops, the steady weekly thing. It's like, oh yeah, you get a little taste of what we had to grow up with. We had to wait till next week, and so that's the, the communications going on in the living room. It's like, well, we can't watch the next one until next Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but me, like personally, when my wife and I sit down, sometimes we want to watch two or one, and finish at that. But we also like to know, all right, we're in this for 8 episodes, or we're in this one for 10 episodes or whatever. So I definitely like it when they release it all and watch it whenever I want.
How about you, Rob? Weekly or all at once?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you would have asked me a year ago, my answer would have been all at once, but it's actually changed as of recently. And now I'm back to celebrating and wanting more weekly drops. So I'm looking forward to chatting more about how and why that changed.
Okay, I'm curious to hear why. How about you, Jen? Weekly or all at once?
Give it to me, baby. I need it all at once. It's just, I remember back in the day when I had to wait week after week for the show 24, and I think I had anxiety attacks every week. So much so that I ended up, watching, season 5 and ended up going to the store to buy the whole freaking 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 collection because I needed that fix. So yeah, I'll give it to me all at once so that I can always go back. It's not I can always play the episode I love.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, I fall in the weekly episodic camp. So looks like we're evenly divided here, 3 and 3, if my math is correct, which is kind of cool and not what I figured, but hey, who knows? That's why we're here to talk about this. So we're going to let the greedy people talk first. Gabe, all at once. Give us a deeper meaning or why you think that's the better method for streaming platforms to release their better strategy, I guess.
Well, not only am I greedy, I'm also old. So I don't remember everything that happens in every episode I have to wait week to 2 weeks to see it. So I like to be able to watch all of them at once because I remember the plot. Sometimes their plots, they stretch things out so far. You're like, who is that character and what did they do? And they backstabbed that character and trying to keep track of everything that's going on is so much easier when you're binge watching than when you have to wait for another week and you start watching other shows. Life distracts you, gets in the way of you watching your favorite show. So for me, it's kind of a simple answer. I'm old and I can't remember a lot of stuff, so it's just easier for me to watch it all at once.
It's funny you say that because I used to hate the recaps that they played on episodes, but now I love them because it reminds me of what happened the week before or whatnot. So what about you, Adrian? How come? Well, you gave us a little glimpse into why you choose all at once, but can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
I mean, not really.
Like, we said it all.
Yeah, I already said it all. Thank you so much, guys.
Mind.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. No, again, like I said, it's like Gen X says, man, give me all of it. If we want to sit down and watch 2 or 3 at a time, we enjoy that. But we won't watch like whole seasons. We've never really binge watched anything. I think I'm pretty proud of saying I've never watched from episode 1 to 10 or 12 or something. That's just crazy. My brain would just explode. But I don't know. I just like knowing what I'm in for, really, what we're sitting down and going to invest our time in. So, I mean, it's really, really more that. I mean, the only thing I don't like about it is there could be spoilers, if it's a hot show and everybody's watching it and some of the YouTubers are watching it or some of the content creators are like, you'll never believe how this season ends kind of stuff. Yeah. And it just, that irritates me a little bit, but I can dodge it. I'm getting really good at dodging it, and I see it. We can scroll fast enough and skip things fast enough. But I definitely like to know what we're investing our time in.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts you have to share about this, Gen X?
No, I think my comrades in binging, I actually don't binge it all in one weekend. I think that that's actually destructive for itself, especially when you forget to eat and or go to the bathroom because you don't want to leave the remote down. You want to put it down. But I think it allows me to kind of come in and out of the material. I analyze things in my head, so I can actually go to an episode and be like, I need to watch that because I really didn't pick up on like these little nuance pieces that episode 5 might have shown me. And so, I hate to sound like Roger Ebert, rest in peace. But I think one of the things that it allows me is to literally choose, to invest in. Just like Adrian said, I think, it gives me an option. I've seen things where I'm like halfway in and I'm like, God, I just wasted 3 hours. But now I know I don't have to waste the rest of them because this YouTuber just gave me the whole synopsis. So I like to think that I like to have a life as well. So that's the other option. Binge watching to me seems to be kind of overrated at this point. Gabe, I'm with you. Sometimes my memory is so shot that I'm like this. I confuse 2 characters that look alike, but they're not the same person. And I'm just like, and you lost me there, right? So if the writing's good and it captures me, I might binge watch, 3 episodes straight and say, ooh, maybe I'll save these candies for later. So that's the greedy part as well.
Okay. Well, now let Rob, Jack, and myself tell you guys why you're wrong. Okay. So Jack, go ahead and tell us a little bit more. I knew you had a lot to say there, but you held yourself back at first.
I cannot wait to convert 3 and 3 into 5 and 1. 6, all 6. I feel so passionately about this because I'm a creator, and I feel like on the creation side, you put so much. It's not just the time and energy it takes to make these things, but it's the stuff that you're building into it. So it's like when you're cooking, you've got like flavors, you have the immediately on the palate, and then the stuff that kind of recedes to the back, and then the stuff that's sort of in the aftertaste. It's the same thing with, I think, and not everything. And I just want to just at the top say, there's no wrong way to consume anything. There's, and also I don't think that the way a creator wants it to be consumed is a dictate to everyone on how it can be. You can do whatever. Like I watch movies on planes. I'm sure no director is like, oh, please watch this with a kid kicking you in the knee for 6 uncomfortable hours. So with that proviso, there's no wrong way to consume anything. I think there's 2 issues. I'd like to address the first one now, but then I don't want to talk too much. So if I can come back around to my second. But the first one is like, especially now in this sort of era of like so much media in every kind, like there's movies, there's podcasts, there's video games, there's actual old-fashioned reading a book, there's listening to music. There's so much media, and it's everywhere. It's in your phone, it's mobile. You're never away from your infinite library of everything that you love. Mm-hmm. So the way that we consume is about attention, is about how much attention and focus am I going to give this thing. And if it's a thing that you're interested in, if it's a thing you like, if it's a thing you love, it is crazy to me that you want to just burn through 6 hours of it or 3 hours of it or 4 hours of it, and not take a little time to like think about it, to kind of like, break it down. One of the things that's so great about like the extended like fan community that we have now, thanks to the internet, is that like after an episode of something, you can go and you can talk to your buddy. Like it used to be like, oh, I love the X-Files and I have nobody except the people I'm going to pester at work to talk to about this. But now you're connected with other people who love the X-Files more than you, and you can kind of like wring it out. And I think like part of the consuming of something is the appreciation of something. And I worry that like for myself, not for other people, when I'm really blown through something, like, oh, am I actually taking the time to kind of like, because like the way the system is set up, they build in cliffhangers at the end. You're meant to want to like immediately jump onto the next one, which is sort of like, it's a little bit of a Pavlovian response, but like we can control that. We don't have to determine, like when we watch or how, or read, or, like, so I just think overall, like if something is something that you care about, and it's something that you're invested in, the attention that you afford it. And I think our culture and the way the world is moving now is about like half attention to everything, which I don't think is great. Like, I think you have to like make a conscious effort to like, whoa, slow your roll. And like, I'm not going to give like divided attention between three things. I'm going to actually focus. Because when you do focus, like, oh my God, it's so much richer. And it's made that way. You know, like the people creating it want you to marinate in it. You know, they put a lot of stuff in there for you to dig up and find. So I'll have a part two, but we'll get to that.
Okay. How about you, Rob? I'm curious to how you, over the past year, shifted from one method to the other.
Yeah, I mean, I if you guys probably saw, like when Jack was talking, I was like shaking my head so much because so much of it is a lot about what I think I've been feeling, you know, in the past year where, you know, I remember growing up with VCRs, right? When like getting to Blockbuster on a Friday night and trying to get that new release while there was still one available was like such an event, right?
Yeah.
And now we have it relatively simple, right? We have all these streaming services. You can rent a digital copy of anything on Amazon, et cetera. So, you know, we kind of do have it easy. But on the flip side, like you said, Jack, we also have so much more opportunities to be pulled in so many different directions, right? So, you know, like even me now, I recently bought a VCR and I started to actually repurchase old movies that I love on VHS because I kind of feel like I'm longing for that experience when I was just about that experience, right? Like when I sat down to watch a movie, it was about that movie. So how does that translate over to the idea of, you know, streaming a whole series, like let's say in one shot versus having it released weekly? You know, I think the weekly, I feel like allows you to savor a little bit more, right? And I think that's kind of what Jack was getting to, right? About having that time to let something marinate and savor and take this appreciation of everything that went in and then be excited, right? Kind of hold off that gratification for a week. I feel like when that episode comes, then it's like an event, right? And maybe that kind of, I don't know, maybe reminds me of being a kid because I do remember when a show we'd have to wait that week. It was grueling. But, you know, when that Wednesday or that Friday came about, that was all you were thinking about, you know, and I still feel that way about shows now that are released weekly. Like I'm excited for that Monday drop or that Wednesday drop. So even if I have work to do, I'm like, oh, I want to wrap out my work because I want to watch that over dinner or whatnot. So I just, yeah, I've been really digging, looking at things in that way and, you know, just trying to be a little bit more present with the television, the film, and trying to block out a little bit more distraction.
Right on. Yeah. So did we convert any of you guys to just going to enjoying weekly more?
No, it may be even more so because God forbid something were to happen to you and you pass away before that series is
and
over.
You never finish.
You never got to see it. I don't care if you go upstairs or downstairs. Either way, one is spoiling it for you and the other one is not going to let you see it anyway because there's no VHSs, I believe, in heaven.
Then it's not heaven.
Sometimes we choose, my wife and I would choose something that's so intense that we just cannot do the next. Maybe tomorrow. All right, let's pick this up tomorrow. I don't know if any of you are like watching Outer Range on Amazon or anything like that. It's like, it's just really deep and it's pretty far out. It's an amazing show, by the way. Josh Brolin is the lead in that. And it's crazy. And I was like, you know, we can't watch 2 episodes of that in a row. Stuff is just really intense sometimes. So where we just have to moderate ourselves and moderate how much of this show that we want to watch and then we want to get to the end and we want to know what happens. But it's just going to take our time. We're going to walk there. You know, there's no reason to run down the hill. Yeah. You know, we'll get there. I promise.
I think that's the big point of the whole release all at once is they leave it up to the consumer to view it on their own schedule, right? So if you want to watch the whole season at once, you're able to. If you want to space it out weekly, you're able to. So that's one strategy I think a lot of the streaming platforms have decided to go down is leaving it up to the consumer, which I guess is okay.
You don't want to leave it up to me because I get bored really easily and I will be really into zombies one week want to binge like Walking Dead, but
Mhm.
then like the next week I'm like, ugh, zombies. Like I don't want to watch anything. So it's like that's why I kind of have to binge things because I get tired of watching something for like 2 months, 3 months, where once a week, it just kind of, I don't know. I that's my own personality flaw, I guess, is I have OCD or like ADHD or whatever, but I just get really bored with like, for example, The Gilded Age is such a great show, but I like watching it like all at once so that I don't have to revisit it every week and go into that mind frame of old timiness. Then I want to be the next week. I want to be in the future. The next week after that, I want to westerns or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just like I have OCD.
I I will say it is a great business model for companies to do it out in a weekly basis because they've had issues with memberships and people basically sticking around or just opting out.
Sure.
So I get the weekly thing. I think that there's also what I would call is that fatigue piece that Gabe is talking about, which really is really talking about, for example, um, you watch it and every week and you might forget that one week and then you're lost and then you decide not to come back to the actual show.
Yeah.
Even if you do love it, you're kind of
Yeah.
just like in limbo for a minute because
Mhm.
you're kind of like, oh, do I really want to go back to it? I kind of get the premise of the story. I get it, whatever. I'm doing that now with what's that show with Jeremy Renner? I feel so bad that I watched the first 3 episodes, the mayor of Kingstown,
Yeah.
and I've gotten like I was into it. The first, they put out 2 episodes a week, and I've lost my way basically. So I don't know if I want to go back to it. Just because I got other things to watch or I have other things to invest in. So, there's a business case for it, but there's also, as far as like binging, it forces the companies to actually create more material so that people can actually have options to come back and stay with their memberships. But, I mean, I haven't dropped my Netflix membership because I know Umbrella Academy is going to be followed by another, show and so on and so forth that I'm really geeked out about.
A good point about binging model, I guess, is that they know that there's so much content or shows out there that they want you to view it, especially if it's say a Netflix original or a Hulu original. They want you to see all of their stuff before you get distracted by shinier things or other objects. So that's a good point. Now, Jack, go for it. Second point that you were going to
No,
make.
I wanted to, yeah, all right. But I want to build on what Jen X said, because I think that is the thing that I find truly crazy, especially for like, it's not just that it gives them a little bit of like, oh, hey, we have a little bit more production time because we can build into the release schedule. We can build production into the release schedule. But on top of that, there's this sort of like you're in the cultural conversation. And I think the thing that like the water cooler, and that has a kind of value. And if you just get like, hey, this dropped, and you have like a 2 week window in which anybody who covers culture is going to comment on it, and then it's just it's just dead. And I have to say, when Netflix when Netflix introduced the binge, I did such a like just sunk into the dark place. Just because the idea of working on something, and these things take years, working 3 years on something, putting your heart and soul into it, making something truly, utterly fucking fantastic. And then literally 6 hours later, somebody has seen it all. Like it's like all of that work just incinerated. And that is kind of my point too, which is it does not escape my notice that the divide between who's on the drip and who's all at once is also people who create content versus people consume content. And I just have to say, like, I think this was a part of our conversation last time. It's look, we all want the best stuff out of our best creatives. Like we want every creative that we love, the stuff that they make, to be able to continue making great stuff that we will continue to love. but we're in this sort of process, and this is across like, this is in comics, this is in movies, this is in music, this isn't, that like you have to just constantly be creating stuff and at such a crazy fast clip that I think that phrase that's kind of popular with the kids now, like, let her cook, like, hey, sometimes the missing ingredient to make something great is a little bit of space to accrete. If I could just for a second talk about like my creative process, I always like liken it to like you put out a strip of fly paper and you are working on one main idea, but like all these other stray ideas can come in and get stuck on that fly paper. And it may not necessarily be something that intuitively connects, but you're just casting this wide creative net and all this stuff is coming in. And I think like that process, that to use the word marinate again, that marinating, what that needs sometimes is like a little bit of time and not like, hey, let's get this pumped out as fast as possible so that we can then have like 3 days when it's consumed and then never spoken about again. So I think like, hey, this isn't just about our consuming practices. It's also about like, hey, what do we want from the people who create this stuff? And I think you have to kind of say like, you have to allow these people a little bit of runway to kind of like continue to make the stuff that they want and to make it in a way that isn't frantic. I think everybody could say I assume we all love the Marvel movies. That little window there for the past couple of years where you had like 6 movies, 40 shows, like everybody was stretched a little too thin. And I think like Bob Iger came out and was like, hey, we made some mistakes, we're scaling back. And I think everyone is super excited for like, okay, let's take a breather. Maybe just 3 movies a year. Like let's get everybody back on board. Let's fall back a little, huddle, and like go forward with a better plan. So like that's what I think like ultimately, if you think about your consuming practices, think like, hey, what is actually like what's like destroying the creative environment and what is like locusts and what is sort of nurturing the creative environment. And I think like on the drip, man, that's how you give people time to do stuff.
Curious.
Well, now I'm starting to feel guilty for being so greedy.
I know.
Okay, 4-2. We got.
I feel like I'm like one of the kids from like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where I'm like, I want it now. I want all of it now.
Jack, I think the part that you just spoke to, I do feel guilty now. I understand the creative side, but I completely get it. I think that that's why now more than ever, when you look at comics, that's why the indie side to me appeals, because you're able to be Prince or whoever, they take forever. Prince used to wait forever to put out an album, but you knew it was going to be good because the product was good. The talent was good. And so I think that's the difference. I think you're right. When you have a corporate structure, it doesn't allow for that creativity to flourish the way it needs to organically. And the consumer piece, we do need to kind of marinate, to use your word, marinate, or settle into the foundation. Because I also think that in real time, we also find ourselves with our fans giving us feedback on what exactly we could improve upon. And it does add value to what's going on. I still haven't changed my mind that I'd like the whole thing. And that's probably because I'm anti-corporate at this point. And I'm in your side, Jack. Let's unionize and let's get them to, give you the space and time to make what you need to make on your time.
If I can just build on that really quick. As a comic guy, like Kickstarter came in and I shouldn't just say Kickstarter's crowdfunding in many different forms. And what gets kind of balanced out with crowdfunding is, first of all, it's sort of like you go to the artist that you're going to hire and you get their rate first and you sort of build that into the budget. Instead of saying like, I'm going to pay somebody $30 a page, you get what their budget is. And then you build the budget based on what everybody needs to be paid paid equitably. Mm-hmm. And then what is kind of like sort of happen over and over again, project to project, is like, oh, hey, instead of what we've gotten for years from Marvel and DC and the rest, 30 pages every 30 days, rain or shine, people for $5, people are willing to pay a little extra. They're willing to pay like $20 for a single issue on a Kickstarter, and they're willing to give the guy like 3 months to do it. And so like, I kind of feel like what we're seeing with Kickstarter, with crowdsourcing, is like, oh, this is the actual time it takes, and this is the actual way to pay everybody equitably. And I think that's the sort of like, when you see when you see creative costs reflected back at you, then like everything is about like, hey, how do I marry my behavior to the outcome I want? So if I want great content, I marry my behavior to it by like, you know what, I'm just gonna I'm gonna support streams that support that. So yeah, no, I totally. The thing about I think there is a distinction though. I think there is a distinction between like, you know, you're watching like a lot of shows. The latest Dunes are a good example where you're like, hey, in order to do Dune properly, you can't be like a 2.5 hour movie. You have to kind of give it a little extra time. And I think a lot of the stuff that you see in streaming is like, hey, instead of trying to do this as a 2 hour movie, let's make it a 6 hour or an 8 hour. And I think like, yeah, you want to consume that relatively close to itself, you know, like you want to sort of watch it together without breaks or things like that. So I'm all for like with comics. It is hard to go month to month and follow a story. It is great to just get the trade, but I also think that the month to month drip is the thing that supports, you know, the creatives actually making the stuff.
Fair enough. Speaking of creatives, though, I'm just curious, and maybe Rob, this might be something that you might be able to touch on more. If you know your season, you're told we're going to release this all at once. Does that change the way you approach the story arc to your endeavor, to your writing? Does that way, or do you now have to shape it differently as opposed if you were going to be given, okay, we're going to spread it out over 6 weeks and let people sit with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think it necessarily changes the process. I think, though, if you know that your schedule is on a weekly drop, maybe you might be a little bit more cognizant, right? About, man, I want to really make sure each episode really has that moment where you're like, I have to come back, right? Just like when we had commercial breaks, right? Mm-hmm. A friend of mine who's been a television writer forever, you know, started writing when there was commercial breaks, right? And he was saying that he learned from his mentor, you got to always leave that commercial break moment where it's like, I need to come back. And that's how he still approaches projects, even without commercials. So I think it is something to be cognizant of, right? Because then I think you keep your material always something where someone's like on the edge of their seat. But, you know, this is actually something I wanted to ask, because I feel like everybody here, for the most part, likes Star Wars or has seen a Star Wars, right? Project. All right, I'll raise my hand. Me, guilty as charged. I remember when, not this guy, Adrian, about. Okay. But I don't know if you guys remember when Mandalorian dropped. For me, I just think it's like one of my favorite Star Wars stories, you know, film, television, otherwise. It really spoke to me. It really reminded me of the Star Wars I grew up on. But what also, too, was so fun and exciting was because it was released on a weekly basis, going online and looking at theories, right? Like discussing Easter eggs. Who do we think is going to come in? Who is this baby Yoda child really? Where do they come from? So like that, for me, I feel like had it been released all in one shot, I personally would have lost out on that experience because I loved all that reading in the week between. So, but I don't know. And that's interesting because you started off today with the question about pop culture, right? What is pop culture to us? I'm curious what you guys would think, dropping everything at once versus weekly. Does weekly work better for things that are in the pop culture zeitgeist, maybe because people always talk about them, right? Like if it's a new piece of IP, would that do as well on a weekly basis, right? I'm just curious if that has an impact, because I feel like for things like Star Wars, they do it weekly, but then Netflix obviously has other pop culture shows such as Cobra Kai, where you get the whole season usually in one shot. This year it's split into two, but yeah, I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'll let someone else chime in here, but my next guidance of this talk was going to be about social media. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. Adrian, any thoughts on that?
No, I did want to mention something like the drop. I don't think the drop would work. The drop only seems to work on streaming. I couldn't see, wall TV, as I think our generation likes to call it, wall TV doing a drop. They couldn't do the 24 show. Oh, here's all 8 episodes in a row, y'all. And it's it starts at 7 and it doesn't end until 4 a.m. I don't know, something Rob had said, it had made that click in my head that This only works on, and I didn't really think about that until we started sitting here, that this only works on a streaming device of some sort. And I was curious on if anybody here actually watches Wall TV. Do they have local channels? Do y'all have local channels that y'all watch? I don't.
I don't.
Gen X, you do?
Yeah, we do actually. In Baltimore, it literally we have a little bit more of a different offering. They even show cartoons from way back in the day, and they also show like these old Canadian shows that we used to watch. You know, New Kids in the Hall and things like that. So we get to watch a lot of those old school. Yeah, but I to your point, it is generational too. I don't know. I think I'm guessing we're all Gen Xers.
Yeah.
I think this generation in particular can fluctuate between these types of formats. I think that we flourish no matter what. I'm not saying we're the best generation, but maybe I am saying that because we're the conduit and we're also the ones that kind of are dictating like a lot of different things. We actually can operate in different modes. I can still sit down, just like Rob was saying, get a VCR. I can sit and watch this Wall TV stuff. I can actually take my time and watch the Jeffersons if I want to from, season 5, and be like, all right, cool. I could binge watch that on the Honeymooners on a New Year's Day. And I'm built for it. Other folks, they need everything right then and there, especially the young folks. That's just how they operate. And everything is I agree. I think the moderation piece and also having we can flow with that a little bit easier. I'm not sure if the other generations could say the same. I think it would be a generational like pick and need and want based on their like preference. But to Adrian's point, like it really is something that's subjective. Like I said, I can live in both worlds and still survive, which is probably why I would survive a zombie apocalypse.
I will say that the boomers are having a very hard time. The ones that I know with like a streaming device, just a Roku. Oh my God. I feel like my father-in-law is about to have a heart attack every time something happens to the Roku, trying to explain streaming and then Wall TV to my mother and how she can watch her shows now is I just want to I'm going to throw myself out of the window, literally, and I think they're having a hard time with that. I know when I go to my in-laws' house, it's going to be Pat Sajak, it's going to be Jeopardy, and then some singing, dance, judging show. And then the news. Oh my God, 2 hours of the local news of who got murdered and who got robbed. Like, can we watch something else? Like, or turn off the TV? I can't, I'm so happy football season is going to be around because then when we go over there, it's just like football all day, if we go on a Sunday. But I will have to say that the baby boomer generation, and that's not kidding around or giving them a hard time. That is just my scientific observation of saying, oh my God, y'all really can't get a grip on this right now. And trying to explain it to them is just like speaking another language. So I think that we what? Go ahead.
I was just going to say your mother-in-law might be behind you. I just wanted to let you know.
She's not behind me. I'm not scared of any of them. I'll tell them to their face, man, y'all are having a really hard time with this Roku. It's this big.
Well, technology aside, I do think as Gen X, we do fluctuate, like Gen X said, between both worlds, analog, digital. That's just what makes us so great. And that we were there at the beginning of the internet. We were there at the beginning of the social media platforms, and we know how to navigate that. And I don't want to say it's our job or our role to guide in the older generations and help to mentor the younger ones, but maybe it is. Maybe that's just something that, that's just what we have to do and what we have to put up with. Because like you, Adrian, when my mother-in-law and father-in-law always have questions about technology, I have to answer it every time I go over there. So maybe it is just something that we have to do.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys have heard this, but I read an article not too long ago saying that a lot of the younger generation kids today, there's a big uptick in purchases of old Apple iPods because they're starting to get to that place where they want to more focus, and again, I use that word savor, like savor the musical experience and not have it be marred by notifications and text messages. So, it's so funny, right? It's like when we were kids, people were like, "Oh, I worry about your generation," right? Then we get older and we're like, "Oh, I worry about their." I guess that's just how it goes, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cool, man, that the younger generation, at least from what I see, they drink less. They're a lot more career focused. They're trying to find some kind of a spiritual practice, get more into the analog experience. I don't know. I just think it's really cool. I was in LA, I think it was like last week, and I went to a VHS store there. I always try to grab like one every time I go. So I found an original copy of Scream, which was pretty cool. And the kid working, call him kid, but he's like 26, working at the VHS store. We were just like wrapping up about like old CRT TVs and the VHS experience. And this kid knew his stuff, man. And I was like really impressed. I was like, man, like I remember growing up with this stuff. But I guess that's what happens, right? The cycles, they just, the generations, they kind of just cycle through. And it's just cool to see that it's not being lost completely. There's hope. There's hope.
I was listening to another podcast, and at the end of it, they do a like, "Hey, we recommend" kind of thing, and they were young people. I like to sometimes like I can't remember who said it earlier. I like to sort of like it's what we consume is also a window into like the younger culture and what they're doing, and like helps keep us a little relevant. But either way, so one of them was saying like, "Hey, here's what I recommend." I recommend. I finally put up my record player and I played some vinyl, and it's so cool. It's like you get to hear the whole album. Usually, there's like thematically something that they're trying to do with all things. There's it's not like Spotify is interrupting and sending you off listening to somebody else. And just like listening to a full album, you can't skip. You have to just go song by song. It's just such a really cool experience. And my heart, I was like, oh my God, the kids are going to be all right. And then the next person stepped up and they were like, I went out to see a movie in the theater, and I really recommend going to see a movie in the theater. Like you get your popcorn, you get your bucket, and the screen's so huge. It's just such a fun way to watch a movie. And I was like, oh, you know what? Despite all the interventions, despite Steve Jobs, like the kids are actually like, hey, sometimes just because something's been around for a long time doesn't mean it's broken or needs to be fixed. Like sometimes I think a physical book, like a little book you hold in your hand. Hey, you know what? They're not super expensive to make. Hey, they're easy to take around with you. They're actually not improved by putting, in a digital or storing on the cloud. So like these things that have endured, going to the movies, listening to a full record, I think they're perennial. It just like, it takes time for the new generations to cut through the noise of tech to find them.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Now, I have one other question I want to get all your opinion on, and I'll start with Gabe, and because you're a part of the Binge All at Once crowd, and I'm curious what you think about how binge model versus weekly episodic model affects people's mental health and the social aspect of it all.
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question because
Well, you could start off the conversation.
I love getting jacked up on like Diet Coke and caffeine and like binge watching. I don't know how healthy that is for my mental health, but it does seem to calm me when I am binge watching. Like it comforts me, especially if I've seen something before and it's like visiting an old friend, like going and watching American Dad for like a full season really calms me down. And it just I don't know. I think that it helps me. I don't know about other people when it comes to binge watching or it being, but for me, I definitely it makes me feel a lot better when I can watch a few episodes of like American Dad, for example. Just feels like home.
That's interesting, Gabe, because when I was thinking of that question, I was thinking of it as like the negative impact on your mental health of binge watching. But you just proved that it could be a positive impact on your mental health where you can have that comfort show or someplace where you can go to find escape, or maybe you're feeling not so well and you want just someone there to be like a friend, and you have that show there. So very good, very true. Anyone else on the aspect of mental health or even the social aspect of Weekly? Adrian.
I'll say that I mean it's part of some of the research. I did look it up a little bit, did my own tiny little dive into the negative aspect, but I do experience, and I have for years, that I'll watch TV until I will not necessarily just binge watching, just watching TV late until I start getting tired and sleepy. And then when I turn off the TV, I toss and turn for like an hour because and what I researched, what I found, a lot of that is affecting sleep problems and fatigue. A lot of the late night watching, and there was some experts out there, just people giving advice on, don't watch TV or don't look at your phone at least 2 hours before you go to bed. And I don't think any of us can do that. If you do, I commend you. But I'm up, or I'll look at the clock sometimes before I start getting sleepy. I'll look at my phone just to see what time it is. And and it's pushing midnight and I'm still up watching this movie that I have no business in watching, that I can pause and come back to tomorrow, So, but I always feel that I am a victim of of my own fatigue of, I do it to myself kind of thing. And I do notice that I'm tossing and turning, and it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to get to sleep, even though I was dozing off or I woke myself up in the middle of the movie, I snap out of it. And it's just, fatigue was one of those things that I could relate with. Now, other things were like poor diet and blood clots and heart problems and stuff like that. I'm not having any of that, but and that was specifically for binge watching and mental health. But that's more like physical health, really. Blood clots, guys, that's crazy.
In my house,
like get up and like do some squats or something while you're binge watching. You can't just sit and drink Mountain Dew like the whole day. I encourage like getting up and walking to your kitchen at least once or twice.
Some squats.
In our house, we play a game called "Is it self-love or self-harm?" So I think binging is one of those things where it can do both. Like on the one hand, like if you're not feeling great, you just kind of want to like. Or, like, I think sometimes, like, you just get taxed by the world and you're just sort of like, you know what I want to do? I just want to, like, lay in a little coma and not be, not have to think or process all the stuff that's going on. And then there's the other part of it, which is like, you know what? I'm going to just abuse myself for 6 hours. So self-love or self-harm? You just got to, like, check in on which side you're on. But I wanted to just... there was an article, I think like a year ago, they were talking, it's a Japanese word and I'm afraid I can't remember it, but it's like revenge staying up. It's like you're angry and hostile about your job, so you revenge stay up later, even though it makes you more tired the next day. And I gotta say, I think we're all, like you had said, pretty close age group, but like, I don't know if you guys remember the like Adult Swim block. On Sunday night, which was the worst because like it's right before you have to go and start the work week. But their block started at like 10 and went until like 2 a.m. And it was like all this great stuff. Like, it was Futurama. It was a lot of really great. And I would just oh man, I would punish myself with it. But looking back on life, even though and I never got fired, even though there was a lot of miserable days of just being like sleepwalking through the next day, like I still remember that feeling, just like being up, doing the thing that you love. That also I think kind of is like, I don't know, it's the way you get through it, right? So I think totally worth it. It's worth beyond.
Absolutely. Rob or Gen X, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, yeah, it's interesting about, I think someone had said, watching an old series, particularly watching several episodes back to back, can feel like seeing an old friend. You know, I think that's one of like the coolest thing about also too, like revisiting old series. Like I remember, so I was the same age as the Dawson's Creek characters were when they're in high school, and I watched every episode of that show, right? Because I remember when they were in sophomore, but first day of sophomore year, that was my first day of sophomore year, right? So I was like, oh, this is a show that is dealing with high school with kids that are my age. And now I remember now looking back at it, at my current age, it's like, oh my God, it's like it feels like coming back home, but it also makes you remember when you're young, how everything feels so heightened as compared to when you're an adult and you start paying bills and all this stuff. But yeah, for me, while I do prefer weekly, I can really rock with both. Like I brought up Cobra Kai before, and that's a show that probably one of my favorite shows of all time. Because I grew up loving the Karate Kid. I thought they did such a good job with that series, and I know that's really difficult, right? Talking about pop culture, tackling a series which is so much a part of pop culture, it means so much to so many people over so many generations. That must have been scary for the creators. But that's a show where, it was usually around New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, they would always drop the new season. And I would wait until midnight. I'd be at a New Year's Eve party, whatever. I'd get home by 1:00. And my fiance, who's now my wife, knows I'm putting it on. You can go to bed. I'm going to be watching. And I would sit there and I would watch till I fell asleep. I'd probably get to on average 5 to 6 episodes. I think there was like 2 seasons where I watched it in one shot, all whatever, 8 to 10. Then as the seasons went on, I made it to like 5, 6, or 7. Ironically enough, I have not watched this season yet. And the reason is because I know this is the season to say goodbye. It's the very last season. And I feel like part of me is kind of prolonging that inevitability. So I actually have not watched it. This is the first time out of every season, this is the 6th season, where I did not watch it day one of its release. Because I know that, to have to say goodbye to that series is going to be sad.
That's a whole other episode right there, Rob. I mean,
whole other episode, man.
Where like you don't watch a show or the last episode of a show, maybe not read the last page of a book because you don't want that thing that you've loved for so long to end. We could do a whole other episode on that.
Hey, if you do it, I'll be back for it.
Awesome.
You could even add, my buddy doesn't watch the last of The Doors because he never wants to see Jim Morrison die. And he never watches the very ending of Scarface because he doesn't want to see Tony die at the end as well. Spoiler alert. Sorry, y'all.
I was just going to say he died.
He died? No.
You're an evil person.
Whatever. They bought their ticket. They knew what they were getting into.
I know. I actually know someone, and you're gonna crack up laughing. I know someone who binge watched The Golden Girls for like weeks, and they refused to watch the last episode because they don't want to say goodbye to the ladies. And I'm like, really?
It's
Golden Girls? Wow! But it is.
It's a crazy thing, right? It's like, we all know that what we're watching is make-believe, right? If you will. But there are these characters that they just become parts of our lives that like when there is that inevitability of saying goodbye, it hits you. And I mean, I just think that's a testament to great storytelling. Great writing, great performances, just watching these shows that hit us in that way. And I mean, I think that's pretty something amazing too, right? Think about it, being able to watch something that actually has so much of an effect on you that you don't want to say goodbye to it, and it's interesting because I imagine other people in the world have felt that way, but this is actually the first time I've had that conversation. So it's just interesting to talk to other people who have, maybe experienced that in some varying level or degree.
Yeah, my family and I are. Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead, dude.
I was just going to say, it's just interesting how I never thought, you talked about the mental health piece, like that sense of loss is also, especially if you love something that much, is really relative to like what happens in real life for some people. Not to make fun of the guy that was at the wrestling. I don't know if you ever seen that video clip where the guy's like, "It's real, damn it, to me." And so, to some people that can actually be, the case. I think about all the stuff that I miss and becomes nostalgic, but for some people, they're so invested that it becomes a loss. On the flip side too, like it's also something that you can always go back to. Thank God for the obvious, digital age in which we can actually binge and watch all our episodes. I know every episode of Martin, the show, because I remember the water cooler conversations that would happen when I was in school. Like, did you see this episode of him and, Jack Dragonfly Jones and him karateing his way through the... Yeah, exactly. But I hadn't thought about that, and not to belabor this piece, but my wife, when we got married, she said that I like to watch mafia and like violent, like, crime shows. And I hadn't realized that we had a TV in our bedroom. And that was detrimental for us, because I realized that what was happening was my imprint on her. She was getting nightmares and popping me in the neck because she thought she was fighting someone, and all jokes aside, that actually happened, by the way. She literally popped me in the neck in her sleep. Yeah, it happens to all of us, I'm sure. And Cobra Kai in it, I don't know, whichever show you have on at nighttime. But it's one of those things that we became disciplined. We actually took the TV out of the bedroom because it was actually interfering, as Adrian said, with like my REM sleep. I had insomnia. I was literally like, I could hear, even putting the timer on, I could hear that it would wake me up like an alarm and go, and I was up for another 2 hours. And I'm like, damn it. So it made me more fatigued. But then I was like a crackhead watching, for those 2 hours, watching that same damn episode that I fell asleep to. Yeah. So, I think that as humans, we just have to unplug. Jack, you brought up a great point, to be able to just like, enjoy what you enjoy in moderation, right? That's with anything. But it makes sense, right? And to live life in that same vein, to be able to kind of disassociate yourself. I'm sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
I was going to mention how my family and I are going through that. We don't want to see this come to an end, but we know it's for the best. We're currently, like I said in the beginning, I'm a big reader, and one of my favorite authors, there's many of them, but comic book wise, is Jeff Lemire. When he writes something, he doesn't beat it. Maybe Black Hammer went really long. There was a lot of comics and a couple of spinoffs, but he did Sweet Tooth, and Sweet Tooth is on Netflix. I don't know if y'all have gotten into it. It's only 3 or 4 seasons. And it was like he was very verbal about, it was his decision to just cut it off. He didn't want to beat this thing into the ground to where we watch Sweet Tooth grow old and get married and have kids and the little baby deer people around. He just didn't want that type of thing. And I find that beautiful when somebody puts their foot down and says, all right, this is mine. Came from my brain, and I really need it to just end right now, and I think, Stranger Things could have probably ended at season 2. And now they're having a hard time because all those actors aren't children anymore. Like, we fell in love with this group. Yeah. Millie Bobby Brown, she's 24 years old, 23 years old, and she's about to play an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old. And it's and they're really trying to figure out how they're going to do this. And I guess they did figure it out. We'll all see. But I feel for you when you say, all right, I don't want to watch Cobra Kai too fast. I mean, they're only, what are they, 30-minute episodes as well. It's easy to watch.
Even shorter without, they end up being sometimes 22
minutes. Yeah. It's really easy to watch 4 of those things, 4 of those episodes. And next thing you know, you've watched half of the season and you don't have very much Cobra Kai left. And there's an emptiness at the end. And I think my family and I, after watching this intense show about this great adventure, well written, well acted, all of it, we're going to have to buffer off with, guys grocery games or something, we're going to have to go to some cooking shows. We can't get into another family comic book show kind of thing. Like we have to marinate in what we saw and we have to kind of I don't know what's the right word for it, but just kind of exhale out of it, you
I
know.
hear you.
Danny, in the
Decompress,
post edits,
decompress.
the word of the day should be marinate. Just put it right
Marinate.
over all of our faces.
Well, speaking of marinating, I think we've sat here quite a while and we've all had some great insight and perspectives on our topic. And I want to thank you guys for joining us to talk about this. It's been really great, really insightful. And I want to give a moment for each of you. If you guys have anything you want to promote, whether it be your channels, any projects you're working on, please feel free to use this time to go ahead and promote anything that you might be working on or want to share. Jack, anything?
You can find my comic at guncomic.com. Gun like bang. Although it's not a two-way book. But can I just take this moment because the new panelists are new to me, and hey, this was great. This was a great hang. It feels like I think you said at the top, like, oh, you can kind of tell, like, you know, shared interest, who's going to be your people. So like, it was great meeting you, great hanging out, guys.
Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah, like same, man.
Rob, anything you want to promote or anything like that?
Yeah, well, first off, Danny, thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. And thank you to all you guys for your time. This was such a great conversation because I feel like, you know, I'm so used to and accustomed to talking to just buddies and people I know. So to have this opportunity to talk to people, you know, really who I've never met, but to see how quickly we get bonded by just a similar passion and love for television and film and just what pop culture means to us, it was just awesome. Yeah, I mean, you know, Danny, I work with you. I mean, I thank you ad nauseum, but I will thank you once again. You've been such an amazing part of our organization, which is Life, Latinos in Film and Entertainment. Danny designed our website. He's been so much more than that. He's been such a pivotal part in our growth. So thank you. So growing Life, our organization's a big part of my life. I'm also a filmmaker. So if you guys want to ever check me out on socials, it's at Rob Alicea, my name. Okay. And thank you guys so much. I will come back anytime I invited and would love to chat with all you fellas again. So thanks again.
Thank you, Rob. Adrian or Gen X, and what's your guys' channels or handles that you guys want to share with us?
You can find me. I'm always slinging fun comic book content on Instagram mainly. Almostvintage.comics. You can find me there. If you're into purchasing comics and fine art and hand-drawn stuff, I do. And I have some digital prints as well. You can find me on Whatnot as well. I'm usually there Wednesday nights doing a show with my good friend Mike Fusco that I've only met on the internet, which is kind of weird, but we've never met in person. But we're great friends now. For about a year, we've been doing a split screen drawing. We pick a title. We pick a pop culture title of some sort, whether it be Popeye or Hanna-Barbera or the Silverhawks or Thundercats or something. And I draw in my style and he draws in his style. And cool. We talk shit and goof off and make each other laugh and, you know, just give each other a hard time. Again, we're like brothers, but we've never met. He's over in the East Coast in Maryland, and I'm here. Same with Gen X. We've only been in person three times, maybe something like that. But we've getting this brotherly bond that's going, and it's mainly because of our love for comics and pop culture. So that's pretty much where you can find me. Wednesday on Whatnot, Wednesday nights and Friday mornings. I usually draw on Blank Comics. Again, just by myself and just shooting the shit and talking nerd stuff. Thanks again for having me, Gen X. Thanks for sharing my information and thinking that I would be a good piece of this. And I've enjoyed myself. This is awesome. Thank you.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've had a blast with all of y'all. I did not anticipate that this would be like a freaking amazing thing. I can't wait for the next time we all get together. This is really a great treat. Just follow me on IG, Gen X _comics. And I am also doing 2 podcasts coming up for Back to Basics, a comic book podcast. If you haven't checked out my previous stuff, it's actually on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. And we do all types of stuff. I have a partner that does this with me, Tempos, and we are interviewing Robbie Atkinson, who does the Seven Kingdom manga series. And then I also have the creative for Keisha Demon Eater, Lillavois, who actually his book is kick-ass. If I can, let me show you some of his work. This book is killer, no pun intended. I love it because it's actually also done by Giancarlo Bernal. He's a phenomenal artist. So he has color splashes inside. It's a black and white book with color splash red. It's amazing. So I have those 2 coming up, and I have another 2 podcast episodes coming up. And again, if you would like to help me with my January Gen X Comic-Con, virtual Comic-Con, that's coming up next. I'm recruiting some folks to be interviewed and or produce those interviews. Actually, Adrian hosted Jim Mafu, and he did a phenomenal job. He killed it. So that was cool. And so if you're interested, let me know. Gen X _comics. I also sell books too, but I won't bore you with that. I'll leave that up to the professionals. I'm good at it, but I'm much more involved in this area. So yeah, I have my own YouTube channel too, Gen X _comics as well. I have a ton of videos there as well. So
very cool.
Have at it.
Gabe, any final thoughts and wrap up this episode here?
No, just thank you for everyone for joining us. This episode, it was really great talking with all of you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for watching and listening to us. And please like and subscribe. If you would like to hit us up, our social medias are going to be published with the podcast, and you can definitely stay in touch with us with all of our work. And much appreciated to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Take care, everybody. Bye, guys.